Taylor said, my name is Stephen Salell, and I'm the Robert F. Lange Research Associate for Japanese Art here at the museum. One of my main jobs since I began working here about a year ago has been to help Sean Eichmann, the curator of Asian art here, to curate an exhibition of Japanese shunga, which is Japanese erotic art. What we have on exhibit right now towards the entrance of the museum, when you walk in the entrance, it's the gallery just to your left. This exhibition will be continuing until the middle of next month. And it's the first of 3 exhibitions that focus on the topic of sexuality in the context of Japanese art. By the way, in my talk right now, in my introduction to the film, I'll be showing some images and I'll be discussing some ideas that are sexual in nature, not surprisingly. And so if there's anybody here who is not so interested in that, or who finds a discussion like that offensive, and if you feel the need to leave, I totally understand. Please don't worry about it. Anyways. So alongside the exhibition that we're doing in Gallery 14, and if you haven't seen it yet, please, by all means, check it out. It's a show that Sean and I, and we here at the museum as a whole, feel rather proud of. In addition to the exhibition itself, we're doing some special programming. This afternoon, Sean Eichmann offered a wonderful talk about the Japanese sex industry as it's depicted in many prints in our permanent collection. Not only works of shunga, but also rather mainstream Japanese prints that we've shown here at the museum for decades. In the next coming weeks, we'll be doing other events. I'll be giving a talk on March 6th about the development of erotica as a genre in both prints and woodblock printed books. And on March 15th at the Kawaii-Con, that is the Honolulu comic book and manga convention, I'll give a brief talk about the exhibition series that we're doing here in general. So please feel free to check those out, and if you'd like more information about them, we have information both on the museum's main website and on a special exhibition website that I have the URL here for, shunga.honolulumuseum.org. And if you happened to miss Sean Eichmann's talk this afternoon, we're happy to say that we've videotaped it, and we are planning to put the video on the website. So again, please feel free to check out the site for that reason as well. Some of the works that Sean discussed in his talk are a main section of the exhibition we have up right now. What I'd like to talk about to you, and what tonight's film is about, is another major topic of this year's exhibition, and that is the topic of gender. Specifically, as it relates to early modern and pre-modern Japan. In the art journal Orientations, I wrote an article called "The Ephemerality of Gender, Nanshoku and Wakushu in Japanese Art," and it talks about the idea of nanshoku. We define it typically as a homosexual relationship between men of slightly different ages. And it's a fascinating aspect of Japanese history. And surprisingly, our collection of Japanese prints here at the museum deal with the topic of nanshoku quite a bit. Unfortunately, however, it's a topic that hasn't been very accurately discussed in the context of Japanese history, or specifically Japanese art history. The images of nanshoku are often overlooked even in the genre of shunga. For example, in this image here, we can only tell that the top figure is biologically male by a very slight suggestion of his genitalia. So, in order to eliminate some of the misunderstandings about what nanshoku is, I wrote this article in Orientations magazine. Sean and I actually have had several opportunities over the past few years to collaborate with the staff at Orientations, and I am continuing to submit to them articles about outrageous topics that are illustrated with outrageous images, and I can't tell you how grateful I am for their patience and their enthusiasm. They haven't told me to stop yet, so I'm going to keep on sending them stuff. By the way, please allow me this moment to make a shameless commercial endorsement for them. If you have an opportunity to pick up a copy of the March issue of Orientations, that is where the article is being published. If you were to visit the website that I list here, you can find information about the issue, and you can even order it online if you want. If you were to read the article, you might notice that I talk about nanshoku in quite a different way than tonight's film does. Actually, I avoid using the term homosexual altogether, and several other contemporary scholars of Edo Japan agree, because the rules that define a nanshoku relationship up through the 18th century were quite a bit more complicated than contemporary Western terms about sexuality, such as heterosexual or homosexual, can accurately express. Basically, I argue that a wakushu, that is the younger partner in a nanshoku relationship, in this image, the fellow on the right, he may be biologically male in terms of his sex, but if we were to distinguish a person's sex, that is, whether he or she has a penis or a vagina, if we distinguish a person's sex from his or her gender, that is, a person's social identity as it's defined not only by his or her genitalia, but also by a number of other far more subjective factors like the person's clothing, the person's use of language, gesture, hairstyle, and even the person's age. If we make that distinction between sex and gender, then it's easy to understand how in places like early modern Japan, there may have existed third gender individuals who interacted sexually with men, women, or perhaps both. Now, I mentioned that non-shoku relationships were fairly common in certain sectors of Japanese society, such as the samurai class or the world of kabuki theater, up through the 18th century. In the 20th century, we see some Japanese men, including the author Mishima Yukio, who I'm showing here, we see some Japanese men identifying themselves clearly as homosexual in the way that we define homosexuality in the West nowadays. And so I think that in looking at 20th century Japanese culture, we can talk with a certain bit of confidence about the development of a distinct gay Japanese culture. But you'll notice that there's a bit of a gray zone, the 19th century, where the practice of non-shoku has fallen out of fashion, but men have not yet started to identify themselves as gay either. So how should we understand a sexual relationship between biological males in the 19th century? Should we refer to it as homosexuality? Was it a third gender relationship? It's a matter that's kind of challenging to discuss. And this is the challenge that Oshima Nagisa, the director of tonight's film, takes up and resolves with seemingly effortless grace. He fights the battle on three different fronts. That is to say, he presents us with three different simultaneous stories. First of all, he offers us a historical context. He describes a drama about a militia called the Shinsengumi. Oshima presumes a certain amount of familiarity with the history of 19th century Japan, so let me offer a little bit of background. During the 17th, 18th, and 19th century, Japan, as many of you know, pursued a policy of isolationism and cut off contact with most other nations. In 1853, the U.S. Naval Commodore Admiral Perry sailed his ships into Yokosuka Harbor and essentially forced the Japanese government to begin trade with other countries. The Japanese military government began to quickly dissolve as a result, and a militia known as the Shinsengumi was formed and assigned the task of protecting the imperial family in Kyoto, Japan during all of this political turmoil. The film begins 12 years after Perry's initial arrival in Yokosuka, and the political turmoil of this time is palpable. The leaders of the Shinsengumi are struggling to deal with dissent within their own ranks, and in other words, like any good Japanese historical drama, there's a decent amount of sword fighting and violence. Yay! The second layer of the story is a bit more psychological. When a handsome young fellow, a wakashu, by the name of Kano Souzaburo, joins the militia, suddenly the other soldiers need to deal with a very difficult fact. The fact is that Souzaburo is really handsome. And the fact that they, like all of us, are human beings who are motivated in part by sexual desire. The struggle's not only psychological, though, it's also cultural, because as samurai, they're bound by a martial code of conduct that explicitly forbids them to act according to their personal feelings and to let their personal feelings interfere with their duties. And any soldier who disobeys this code of conduct is required to disembowel himself. And that's where the title of the film comes in. Gohatto, or taboo, refers not to homosexuality or any relationship like that. It refers to the prohibition of personal feelings for a samurai. In addition to these first two stories, you'll occasionally find in this film hints of a third conflict. And to me, it's this third story that's the most intriguing. We hear the inner thoughts of one of the minor characters, the vice commander of the militia, played by the well-known comedian Kitano Beat Takeshi. And what he voices are his reactions to the sexual tension that he notices around him, and his realization that several of his comrades are increasingly fueled by sexual desire, and also his own conflicted feelings about sexuality. And it's in this third storyline that director Oshima Nagisa and Shiba Ryotaro, the novelist upon whose 1962 short story this film was based, that we find a brilliant metaphor: the militia, the police force. How do we deal with emotions that influence members of our community and indirectly the community as a whole? In particular, how do we deal with feelings of sexual desire? Do we police the sexual behaviors of others? Do we police our own feelings? And if we do such policing, then what exactly is the appropriate punishment for a transgression? I've heard that the costume designer for this film, Wada Emi, based the uniforms that the members of the militia wear upon those worn by the Third Reich in Nazi Germany. So I suppose we can guess what Oshima felt about the dangers of such policing. As Taylor said, Gohatto was Oshima Nagisa's final film. He died on January 15th of this year at the age of 80. His contributions to international cinema were nothing less than extraordinary, and I personally am very proud that the Honolulu Museum of Art Dorstoop Theater is taking this opportunity to honor Oshima and his career. Oshima directed several films that deal honestly and maturely with the topic of sexuality. So as the series continues, this series of exhibitions about Japanese shunga, as it continues over the next 2 years, we look forward to presenting to you other films by Oshima, including his masterpiece in the realm of the senses. So let me conclude at this point by expressing my gratitude to everybody who made this event tonight possible. Sean Eichmann, the curator of Asian art, Stefan Joost, our museum's director, the Robert F. Lange Foundation, which sponsors various projects in the Asian art department, Lisa Griffith, our director of communications, the Scott Kubo, the Asian art photographer, who helped us with documenting these events on video, and the staff of the theater here, particularly Abby Algar, Taylor Chang, and Skylar Tsuda, who graciously organized this event and invited me to talk. Most of all, thank you all for coming tonight. I sincerely hope you enjoy the film. Mahalo.